So I got a new camera, and so I thought hey, here's a good way to test it out is should give a little tutorial about how I make my bases for my Black Legion Marines. And just first off, I wanted to say is when you're making a base, just in general, like a very key thing to understand is contrast. You want your base to, and the rim to contrast with your mini. Black Legion in this example is very dark, with the black armor and only a bit of trim. So you want the base to be very bright to contrast it, and then the rim to contrast the base and to also complement the other contrast, the black, sort of as this sort of steps of three. I made it black, so it really sets it out. It sharpens the base, and then the base then sharpens the model. So for my Black Legion, as a bright, base to pick, I chose a sort of desert that used to, or desert dry world. You got some dry desert rocks and sort of riverbed stuff. I mean, the riverbed or the dry lake doesn't really make a ton of sense, maybe geographically. I don't know. I just thought I really like the crackle medium. But this is sort of a finished product we're going for. But in this case, we're going to be changing a little bit because I am making it for my Chaos Lord. And the Chaos Lord has a little extra base thing. So we're going to have to position that. But I use just these paints and a bit of glue. And I do use an airbrush for one part, but you could also just do it very thin with drying. But to get started, the most important thing first is positioning. This isn't glued down. This guy isn't done yet. But figuring out where your model is really important. So sometimes you can use blue tack if it's like this guy won't stick on, but he's relatively sticking on. And I want to figure out, okay, as I say, relatively sticking on, and then immediately falls off. But I want to figure out where on this base does it look best. Do I want a lot of open space? A big part too is, as you guys can really see, bird's eye. Um, how does he look from here, right? He is going to have a backpack, which does add a little bit of space, but not a ton. It's much more vertical, so you don't really need to care about that bird's eye footprint. But figuring out how far back he is, like maybe if I want to put bushes here, or if we look at the other base here, there's some rocks and areas I was going to put. So do I want to put some of those there to help break up, or do I want this area to be completely open? You have to sort of visualize these things. Another big point is overhang. Uh, Not only just the model's overhang, like he's got the sword, he's got his hammer, these things. Especially if you're playing with it, you don't want these too far out because then they're really going to be hard to deal with and hard to actually move the model around or play with. Um, but there's also just bits of the actual base. Like you don't want that chipping over, even if it sort of fits. You want to make sure it's kind of in. You can use both your thumbs, and I think I'm gonna put him right there. And to do that, just plastic glue because I haven't put anything on the base yet. And he, of course, is separate because I'm going to be painting the base separately, and then I'll just paint his foot in manually. Not that hard, it's just gold and black. So now that that preamble's out of the way and I glued this on, this is basically where most people are going to be starting. Just as an FYI, if you're ever seeing this, see the shiny little bit of glue going over here, it doesn't matter. As a new paper, you may be worried, oh, is it going to stick? It doesn't matter. Main reason this is like rough, which you can sort of hear, is just so it helps with both the glue and any paint, it helps it stick. This glue does remove a bit of that texture, but it doesn't really matter. This texture is frankly irrelevant, and we won't see much of it. But I've arranged these paints up here. And none of these paints, they're all Games Workshop Citadel, but none of them are required. There's plenty of equivalents. Um, these are just the ones I use. Armageddon Dunes, Argellan Earth, Morghast Bone, Argos Dunes, and Terminatus Stone. My pronunciation's awful. I don't care. And they're organized in the order I use. So first up, we're going to start with the Armageddon Dunes. And this is what I use for the rocks. It's a texture paint. I've used a lot of it, but normally I have a plastic spludger for it, but I can't find it. Really, honestly, you could use anything. You could use a brush if you don't care about it, but generally a flat surface, and I'm just going to use this dull, very, very kindly, well-treated knife that I have done nothing negative to ever. ignore the red stuff. It's not blood. It's just paint. And just you scoop out a little bit, and you want to find bits. This model or this particular base at least has like a bit of actual texture on it, so I don't need to put as much on this. But if I want rising, I want variance. So I'm gonna pick a spot, and I think in the back here I'm kind of tempted to put a little bit, but in the front here, kind of want just a little bit by the edge, and you just kind of tap it in, and you can also kind of just, if you need to get a lot of it off, you can scrape it there. It's a little too much, but that's part of it. Is this stuff takes a while to dry. You're gonna have to let it sit, so you can adjust and malleate it, and it doesn't matter if a little bit if it gets on your thumb. Who cares? Just don't go touch your cat because they could choke on it. I'm just gonna put a little bit back here just to break up this little back area, even though this back area is gonna be mostly covered. Oops, dropped it. But again, this stuff, like, it doesn't really dry that fast. So you can just kind of just pick it up. The flat surface is more to help you apply it. I'm just going to put it in the back here where I think it goes a little better. And I'll adjust it a little bit. And I like to follow the contours of the base, the circle. You don't have to if you don't want to follow the contours of the base. It's beneficial, but you don't have to. It helps keep the shape as you have a round area, and especially if you're doing a black base like this is cutting off from reality. And I like to have this more on the edge a lot of times, as it sort of feels like this could be, if it's right on the edge of the base, it could be, there could be an entire extra rock here that we can't see. This base is just a cutout from reality. And that's part of what you want with the black base. Another thing you want to do is sometimes if you can get as close to the edge, because it's going to be really hard for you to see, but I'm going to see if I can point it out to you. See that little bit of a lip? That will be covered in paint, but that is a flat area, and so it looks a little odd. If you can try and nudge, it doesn't have to be perfect. Most of the time, the only people who are going to notice is going to be you, but hey, main person you should be impressing with all your paint jobs isn't anyone else. It should be just you. So we're just going to, I'm not going to put a ton of this on here, but just a little bit more touch up, and I think that might be good. I might do some more touch ups, but that's kind of where I want it for this step. Now we basically just put it down, go play a map game for a bit, just wait for it to dry. So now that the the little bit of rocks is done drying, we are going to go on to the next step, which is the crackling. And for that, I use Enkel and Earth. There's the color is frankly irrelevant because we're going to be painting over it. What you really want is what's known as a crackle medium. Basically, it's a paint that it's designed in such a way that's in such a specific way that when it dries, it creates that really lovely crackling effect we want to get. Um, Basically, every single major paint manufacturer, Army Painter has one, Vallejo has one. This is just GW's one. There's tons of them. You can find them. The color is frankly irrelevant here because we're going to be painting over it. But shake it up, and for these, I find you don't really thin them, and just kind of get a brush you don't really care about. This is just some piece of shit. It's kind of small for what we need, but it'll do. Oh my god. Well, give me a second. We're gonna solve that by using this shitty brush. By the way, this is a impromptu thing. If you ever find a paint like this, and it's like, oh shit, it's, the medium is actually separating from everything else, probably just because it's been sitting for too long. I don't think it's too dried. What you want to do is you basically want to agitate. You stick something down there and you stir it a bunch. You want to get all the paint agitated so it all mixes again. Um, and depending on the paint, if you know the exact medium that was used, like for a contrast, if you have contrast medium or something, you put a few drops in there to replace it. You agitate enough, and it will save the paint. It may have a slightly different behavior with how you use it, but it is a good way to save the paint. That's completely impromptu, by the way. I had no idea it was like this, but it's how you fix something like this, especially that white stuff. That's the medium separating. That's not a. It's not a. Just don't ask questions. Now that the paint has been quickly restored, back to what I was saying before, you just simply take a big globule of it and just kind of start applying it where you want it. So in this case, you don't really need to thin this, by the way, because it's kind of better if it's thicker. Because what you're looking for is the specific medium and how it dries. And I tend to just, you want to glob it. I find bigger globs tend to dry better, but you should experiment. There may be different things. The way this dries, like when it's really thin, sometimes it doesn't crackle as much, but that could be what you're looking for. So a lot of this is experimentation, and it doesn't really matter if it covers certain stuff. See how it's covering just focus. It's covering this bit here. It doesn't really matter, and this is why generally you want a bigger brush because you need loads of this stuff. That's why they give you it in a big bottle. So you just kind of glob it in, make sure it sort of fits, because unlike this texture paint, this is liquid. So you can actually just kind of shove it everywhere you want. And I've got a little bit up there, but that's kind of fine. If it looks like there's too much, like kind of see here, it may be a little too much. What you can just do is, use whatever's left on your brush till there's not as much, spread it around. See, it's getting a little thinner there. You can sort of see the black coming through. And then you just come in here and you just take it away. You take away. Take it away like taxes. And then you can just keep spreading it around and you just take away more of it. And you can be a little sloppy with this because it kind of looks fine, and if something is really egregious, it's super easy to remove this because it's quite delicate once it's dried, but you will see that. So let me just finish getting all of the bits on, grab a bit more paint, and again, because you can see so much of the paint's going in here, you want to use a brush you don't care about in case any of that dries down there. Um, but you do want it to sort of end up in a relatively flat. And so you see how there's some holes. You want to just patch that up a little bit. Just touch it. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, as it obviously isn't. But if you see some bits that are like right over here, kind of see with the light, but see how it's a little thinner. So you can just dollop it up. And once you've got basically everywhere you want, um, I don't always cover the entire model like this. It's just specifically how, or the entire base, but I like it like this, so it's just this texture coming through. And then I like to, because who cares about our fingers? They can get a little dirty. Gloves are for people with too much money. You can get, your plastic latex gloves. I don't have as much money for that, so I just use my fingers, because water's cheap. And then you just run your fingers around to make sure the edge is mostly clear. And I know I said the texture paint takes a while to dry. This is going to take a while to dry too. So we're just going to leave it. And I will come back when it's done and we'll see how it looks. So, it's been a hot minute and it's basically dried. It's not fully dried. There's still some little bits, like you can sort of see around here. There's a little bit up here. But it's basically mostly dried. And as you can see, it's wildly different through certain areas. Like certain plates are really big, like here. Other areas are, they're more fragmented. Others are very tiny. Some are so tiny, it doesn't, like my camera can't even get them. It doesn't even look like there's anything there at all. And you can see how massive, or how zoomed in I am. But it's broken up around it, and I think it kind of looks nice. It gives a very random breaking. Which maybe isn't too realistic. It tends to be a little more, the sizes are a little similar. But I like it because I think it breaks up the stuff and adds a good variety in the texture for anyone looking. But you may also be worried, like, look, there's black showing through there. That looks kind of weird. It doesn't look right, and these colors don't match. None of that is relevant because, as you notice with the, unprimed plastic, this is all going to be covered. So the next step is where I use a paint and I cover all of it. I like Morgas Bone, as you can tell by how disgusting this bottle is. I like this paint a lot. I use it for my bones and I use it for my sand. I really like it. It's this nice sort of, it is like the moment where it's not really like pale cream. It's a little too yellow for that, but it's not yellow enough to be a yellow. It's really in that nice fine point, so it allows you to get some really good stuff with it. So I like covering it with this as a base, and then we darken it later. But just as base coat, I'm going to airbrush this, which I know sounds like the rich person thing, but airbrushes can be pretty cheap. You could also do it just really, really thin. You just have to be careful when you're using really thin paints that are super liquidy, that it doesn't pool up too much and create actual texture underneath these. So just be very, very careful as you're applying it, and you're going to have to apply a lot of layers. And if you don't have an airbrush, prime this plastic before you do that. Once you do that, like the paint will stick to the texture paints and the texture medium, totally fine. The crackle medium, totally fine. So you don't have to worry about that. But if you don't have an airbrush, prime this plastic first. If you have raw plastic, don't worry about the base though; it'll stick to that fine. Now that this is done drying, it is time to go on to the next step that I use, and that's shading. And I do change this up a little bit, and you don't have to use the specific one I use, but I'm using the contrast Argos Dunes. And there's a bunch of other things you could use. Agrix Earth Shades, Classic 1 in whatever shade. Thin a dark brown down enough, and you could make your own shade. But anything, you generally want something that is a darker brown to really enunciate the like dips and stuff. And we'll of course lighten it up with highlights later with a dry brush, but for now we want this darker color. And when you're shading, you just want to move stuff around. Like when you're putting it down, especially because this is a contrast, so it's not a traditional shade. It stains a lot, as you can see already. Don't worry about coffee staining as much, especially on like this flatter area. Doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you want to make sure you're spreading it around. As this stuff is very thick, you don't want it to see how it's really staining stuff. You want to spread it around, make sure it's thin, so you can pick up paint from here. You don't want these dark, these very dark. It's really hard to see in the reflective. We see these splotches. You do not want those splotches. The last thing you want is these splotches. So spread them around as much as possible. Uh, keep them moving. See, here's getting a little more. And I'm using a brush I don't really care about. You want to keep it moving. Make sure it doesn't pool, especially when it gets into like little recesses here. Make sure it does not pool. Just keep it moving. See, it's getting a little thick there. Keep it moving. Though you do want enough to seep in, as it's probably really hard to see, but you can see little bits of white. You want to make sure those are filled in, because those will really stick out when everything else is dark, and then this is just like, oh, what the hell is there's a little white bit. So make sure you get that. Just pick up some more paint. Um, and remember, keep the paint moving, though when it dries a little bit, it will start like ripping off as it's drying. You're basically picking off mostly dried paint. So just, you can wet it a little bit more. But make sure to keep an eye, like over there, I almost missed some of this darkness. Keep it moving, keep it spreading. Alright, so now it's done drying, and it still looks a little glossy, but gloss is fine. If you're ever worried about anything, this is just a great hint. If you're ever worried about anything, like looking too glossy whenever it dries, gloss is the easiest thing to fix. Most washes will fix it. Honestly, just get a medium. Just make it really thin. Just put a little thin layer of the medium. It'll dry matte. Really easy to fix a glossy look, but it is something you should fix. I'm probably gonna airbrush this with a varnish afterwards, anyways. But now we dry brush it, and I'm just using permanent stone. You don't have to use the actual dry. It's kind of a waste of money. You can dry brush with any paint, but I like this one. And you can do different colors. I'm gonna try this one out because I think it'll look pretty good. I've done definitely in the past where I've just dry brushed Morghast Bone on it if I don't want it to be too bright. But this is my Chaos Lord. I want him to be a little more out there. And also another thing is, if you are ever doing a base with, or ever doing a model with its own like base bit, as this Chaos Lord here, and there's a little bit of the model molded in, as in this case it's his foot. One, GW, please stop doing this. It's really stupid. I understand that you've got to work out shit, but just make the leg detachable and have me glue the leg in. Because that way, then I don't have to worry about the foot. I can paint the model and then paint the base. It makes it a lot easier. But in this case, I can just kind of, just black and gold, I'll just paint that later. So who cares about that being covered? Um, and here we're going to dry brush. And you want to dry brush very lightly, especially with something so bright, so you don't just swamp it in this and then it just looks like this white. And while you may think that these are delicate, they are slightly, but not very much. You can actually hit these pretty hard. They're kind of in, and especially once we've hit them with both the base color of the Morghast, or whatever your base color is, and the shade. They're pretty enclosed. But you do have to be careful of just hitting them too hard. And actually, funnily enough, that's the camera is that little bit. This is something you should check up on before you dry brush. As you see right here, there's gonna be little bits where it's like looking for most angles. Oh, you can't see it, can't see it. But then there's always gonna be like little bits, and those are really easy to fix. It's as simple as just grabbing your shade and then giving it a shake, getting just a little bit of it on your brush. You don't need a ton because you're just basically filling in those areas. Then finding those areas and just kind of covering them up. Just a little bit of dollops there. And you can always just get a little more. And again, these are like micro fixes. You are probably going to be the only person who ever notices them, but that is no excuse not to fix it, because you are going to be staring at this more than anyone else. This is your model. So fixing it up to what you want is important. It's about what anyone else thinks. Bumped into the camera there. But who cares what anyone else thinks? Doesn't matter. What matters is what you think, because it's your model. Gosh darn it. So just find those little areas, and then I'll dry relatively quickly. You should be really careful about this, but I know that little area the dry brush won't get into, but you should be really careful because you want the paint to be completely dry when you dry brush, or else it's not dry brushing. I just used one of these. You can use anything. I like to have a little more control, especially when I'm just trying to lightly go over areas, so the smaller dry brush does help, but you could use a bigger one too. It's up to your style. Now, some people don't know how to dry brush. It's really simple, and honestly is a magical technique that when you're starting out feels like cheating. You get a little bit of paint. This is actually kind of a lot, but what's great about it is you're kind of trying to remove it. It's going to be really hard to see. I just realized on the white here, but you want to get rid of a lot of it till there's very, very little left. Till it's like, especially on this white, I can barely see it there. And you can sort of do a test sometimes on your hand if you can barely see it. Or just stroke it sometimes and you can sort of see. You don't want a lot of paint. And then you just start going back and forth. And you want to be very light here because see, there's a chance you might put a little too much on. So you want to just lightly go at it. Make sure you get it from multiple different angles. You see it's already making a mountain of difference even though I already got rid of a lot of the paint. You really don't need much. Just a little bit of paint. It's always easier, and this is true of any painting, to build up colors than build down. So always start with a little and then build up. If you need more, if it's like, oh, that's not enough, you can always add more. It's really hard to remove stuff, so just do light, small passes till you cover everything. Now I've done a bit of the dry brush, and I sort of like how it looks, but it looks a little different from my other ones. But really what you should do, and this is really important whenever you're painting, is uh, whenever you're doing sub-assemblies, you want to pretty often, like not always, like because you might rub off the paint, but you want to check the color changes. Like how does this look with the rest of him? And personally, I kind of like it. He may be a little too clean, so I might actually, and that's one of the benefits of using a dry brush is, it's just dust. If you want to make it look like his feet are dusty, right? And I might do that with a bit of his cloak here. So like when it's getting tattered on the ground, once I'm done painting it, I might like, what I'm just gonna do is take a little bit of dry brush and hit it here. And this is a really good way. It's not doing anything there because there's not really much paint on the brush, but it's a good way to add that dirt and dust. And make it look like, he's obviously armored in his black and gold, and then now he's walking in this dusty area. So I kind of might do a little bit of that, just barely though, because I do like the contrast of the gold and black on the actual model. And I think it looks pretty good. I might give a little more dry brush on some areas, but it helps him stand out. And this rock does have a few more details like this. And I might also hit this specific rock. This is something to also think about whenever you're adding anything else. If you would focus, please. This rock is a different material from everything else. See how there's like bits of the gravel down there, but then there's this actual like rock pillar thing. So I might color this a little bit differently to help it, again, look different. You want variance. Right now, this is very bland. While there's a lot of texture here, it's all one color. Your eye just kind of glazes all over it. You want things like this little pendant, and of course the foot's gonna. You want things to break it up a bit. You don't ever want it though to completely like overpower the actual miniature. Right? Obviously, the miniature is what you're here for. You're here to look at cool Chaos Lord or whatever else. Um, you do want a little bit of things so it's not just completely bland. Because right now it kind of looks a little boring. This looks not great. So I might add a little bit for this rock to make it look different, but it still needs to meld with the rest of the army. And right now I do think that if I, let's just grab that uh, other guy, it's a little different. And that's partially just how I like to do things. I like to have my bases a little different. I keep doing different recipes for each of them, but it looks mostly intact. And if I take another base that had its model knocked off, it's a little cleaner. And of course, once I'm done, I'm going to paint the black rim. But I think this is kind of, for my basic scheme, pretty good. Again, small things I'll add. Probably change that, and then this base will look nearly done. And this is a pretty simple process. This is just what I use. I don't. Some people spend a lot of time in their bases. I like my bases to be a sort of fun break from working on the mini, so I tend to not always like doing them so much or making them super complex. Some people do. I don't. So this is just my quick little simple thing with just a few paints. Just start off with the rocks, then we do the crackle medium, then we hit everything with a Morghast bone base. Then we shade it all. And then once the shade's dried, we dry brush everything. And it gives us a nice, very textured. It is of one color, so you want to put little details and things, but it gives you a nice, good texture that the eye has a much more time. It's like, ooh, there's visually like things going on here. There's like my eye can go, okay, start from here, and then I go look around, and I can see stuff everywhere. There's at least something for the eyes to see. That's really important. But yeah, here's my little tutorial on how I do my bases for my Black Legion.